Welcome everyone. If you're just tuning in, it's Green Futures Festivals Radio with a special edition of the Gaia show, exploring with the writer John May, 3 generations of women who have collaborated on a book, Your Planet Needs You, an everyday guide to saving the Earth. We start with John May introducing himself and his experience in the environment movement.
Briefly, I'm a journalist and produced a lot of books over the years. But I've been writing about the environment since probably 1970. I wrote the history of Greenpeace. I've done books on dolphins, on Antarctica, on the oceans, on trees. I ran a tree magazine for 5 years. So, you know, I'm of that generation from the 60s, basically. And it's great to see, you know, the things that were started then are now big global things. So we're all working together, you know, for the same end. So Bernadette and I have known each other for quite a long time. I'm not quite sure, but a good 20 years or so. 30 years. Oh my goodness. Right. Okay. So congratulations to you all. It's an excellent piece of work here.
Thank you.
And, so if it's okay with you all, if I start with Bernadette and just find out, you know, talk a bit more about that, and then I'll come round to each of you in turn, and then we can talk generally about some of the issues in the book. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so Bernadette, first of all, you're the one who started this all off, and I want to take you back to just to give people some understanding of what you've done in the past, particularly your founding of the Women's Environmental Network. What was the things that first inspired you to get involved with environmental issues, and how did you decide to set this thing up?
I was thinking about that recently when I was talking to people about the animal kingdom, and the 2 defining moments, I think, in my childhood were at the age of 11, I started a sit-down strike at school, so that we were using a piece of green land that was surrounded by trees in the break times, and it was so beautiful. The rest of the playground was tarmac, and a boy called Dermot pushed me down the bank of this green area, and
Right.
I had scratches and cuts and bruises and things, and I was really angry with him. I remember being angry with him. But the teachers all said, that's it, nobody's allowed in this green area anymore. It's way too dangerous, blah, blah, blah. And I was indignant and horrified that we wouldn't be able to sit on the earth again, because I realized that sitting on grass was much nicer in the summer months of school than sitting on tarmac, obviously. And I don't know what hit me, but I was so angry that I talked to the entire infant school and made them all take part in a sit-down strike. Everyone sat down at the end of break and decided not to go back to the classrooms until there was an agreement about this green space being used. And I felt responsible, as I was the person that had been chucked down the bank. And so I went and negotiated with the head teacher, and that was my first grown-up negotiation with an adult. And the agreement was reached that the top 2 adult classes, more adult, as in year 5 and 6, were allowed to go and use the green space, but everyone else was too young to understand its dangers, including Dermot. And therefore, it was available to at least some of the school. And the second thing was when I was at least 12 or 13, I was a girl guide, and I really enjoyed it, getting out of the city. I was brought up in southeast London. It was grim, frankly. It was grim, it was racist, it was horrible. I was an Irish girl from a very poor family with a large amount of children. And my escape was to go to the countryside as a girl guide. And I remember the leader sending us to the woods with a paper and pencil and telling us that we had to write down everything we saw or heard for half an hour. And to me, that half an hour was a revelation, because my mind started to open up and I realized, I don't know the name of that tree. What's that? That's a bird I've never seen before. And I was looking at insects and I was looking at how everything was interacting. And it really was a defining moment in me discovering, and the whole Girl Guide environment actually, in everything I did as a guide. I became a Queen's Guide. I was the youngest Queen's Guide in southeast London at the time. Of 14 or 15, I became a Queen's Guide, and I trained myself so that I could take other girls camping, and we would go to places like Cudham for the weekend, and that's how I got out of London and made myself something. I just loved being in the environment all the time. It was clear and obvious. And from that, I went and set up quite a few charities and groups and did campaigns, including the Women's Environmental Network, which I'm quite well known for. I was quite well known at the time. It was quite big. And yeah, other groups.
Can you just say something about that? Because it was, first of all, you won a major global award for your work setting it up. And it was a pretty radical thing at the time, wasn't it?
Well, yes, not just because we were tackling pollution and global pollution stories, which was the chlorine, the pulp and paper industry, the chlorine industry, and all the terrible disasters that the chlorine industry have caused to the environment. It wasn't just about that, but what we did was we took that hardcore environmental problem and we made it very real to ordinary people. And we were women interested in the idea of feminism and women's voice on the environment, and do we have a unique perspective? Have we got something to say? And the niche that we found in the Women's Environmental Network really quickly was that consumer issues are almost exclusively led by women. In terms of women are in the shops, they're buying, they're choosing for their family, for their children all the time. And we realized if we could talk to and educate and work with women, not just as consumers, but as, you know, users of products. And one of our first, not the first, but one of our most successful campaigns was what happened when we started what was called the Nappy Wars. And that was when we brought out a book called The Sanitary Protection Scandal, which we published ourselves. Our first print run was 3,000 copies, and we sold out in 2 days. It was amazing. It was an incredible time, and we didn't realize that many people were going to be interested in the whole problem of sanitary towels, tampons, and babies' disposable nappies. But of course, you know, at that time, we were using 8 tons an hour of disposable nappies, and the cloth market was just nowhere. The people that were making cloth nappies, I phoned them up and they were like, no, that's not a market. It's not going to revive now. We're just making terry toweling robes, they said. And we were like, no, you've got to make nappies again. And they did. And it is a big market now, considering it's a reusable market and you only need to buy it once, which is fantastic for the environment. And all those nappy services and all that all started because of our campaign. But we also, because we were talking to women, the whole issue of sanitary protection was really interesting. And we were talking to women about things that were unsaid in society. And to the point where 30 years ago, when we would go into a room and talk to women about their sanitary products, they were like, ah, there was squeals and people were freaking out, and there was like, oh, I'm not sure, you know, there was a lot of trepidation and fear, and actually through the environment we also were able to talk to them about society, about how we treat women, what we're talking about with women, about women's issues that were hidden. You know, even today, women's issues are hidden. There was a report last week that said that it takes 10 years for a woman to be successfully diagnosed with endometriosis. I mean, that's terrible. 10 years of suffering. And it partly, I believed, in our lifetime, it is because we don't talk properly about women's issues and periods and menstruation and things like that are very wholly in the women's realm, if you like. And so we smashed through barriers. And that's why it became really, it went worldwide. It was a really big movement. And we smashed barriers in women's thinking, and we smash barriers in saying to the industry, you can't get away with producing that just because you think nobody's going to talk about it because it's related to menstrual products. And they did, of course. It was their Achilles heel, frankly. The nappies, the disposable nappies and the sanitary products were their Achilles heel.
Well, bravo, wonderful work that you did there. And in that time, am I right that you left there in at the end of the 90s, but while you were there, you produced the Young People's Guide to Saving the Planet with another writer, Debbie Silver.
Yes.
So that was the seed of the project that you're all doing now. So what was that first one like? Was it? I've ordered a copy. It's a tiny,
no,
much tinier.
It's terrible. Don't read it.
All right.
We were young. We were excited. I was, you know, I own up to being naive, and it was one of the first books I'd written. And right. I was putting across so many ideas. And of course, we didn't have the internet. I mean, how we did that, I don't know.
That, yes.
We didn't have the internet. I bought a lot of books. It was, I remember going into the Virago headquarters and doing the edits on a massive big table, which was their editorial room. And there was all these papers, or every sheet of paper seemed to have masses of red on them. And I remember going in and saying, oh yes, yeah, 10% that one. And, you know, and doing, but it wasn't this time, 30 years later. Oh my gosh, have we not learned a lot more? A lot of the things that we were talking about have come true. A lot of things we were warning about have come true. And also a lot of things we were talking about, people have wised up to and come out with solutions, and we've won some things. In 30 years, what a difference. Now the writing process is different. The you know, writing with these two beautiful women, Beth and Amy, has been a great process, but it's mostly 99% been through using IT, which we were not obliged to do then. I had a computer, but it hadn't taken off like it is now. Definitely, you couldn't even send a file of a book 30 years ago. It was too big.
No PDFs or anything.
No.
I remember those days well. So, okay, well, that gets us off to a very good start. And so if I can speak to, let me just get myself together here. Amy, if I could speak to you now. I understand your big sort of area is to do with fashion.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is an incredibly important part of the whole process, isn't it? Could you talk me through how you became involved, when you sort of, what was it that gave you the passion to get involved in campaigning about these issues?
I think through education and my career, I've always been in fashion, studying textiles and then working in the fashion industry. And then coming out of university, I worked for like in a head office, and I just didn't really think about it. And And I also worked in a retail store, which is kind of where it was actually in Kingston, in the Bental Centre. And I just stood there and I really thought about how much product there was in that one store.
Yeah.
And then I kind of thought about all the other department stores and shops and online retailers, and I was connected, but I wasn't completely connected. It was just like, wow, this is really bad. Like, why do we need all this stuff? And then it wasn't until I got into fashion styling where I kind of pushed further earlier into the supply chain, before those clothes even are like the customers even think about them.
Right.
Which is when I started to think, actually, this is really bad. And I would say around 70% of my clients would have been in the fast fashion industry. I did do some higher end styling work as well. But it was just the turnaround and the sheer amount of work there was every single day. And just on like my photo shoot, we would have to shoot like 60 products. And then I thought about all the fashion photography studios that are out there.
Yeah.
And they're also shooting that amount. And it was like also like how product comes packaged, how it arrives, the transportation, how it's you know, like all the labels that come with and just everything. And then I had to relabel things and repackage, which means more work and more, like, to be honest, plastic packaging. And also then as well thinking about the people who then made those clothes, you know, that's just, I'm the person who, I'm a fashion stylist, everything's nice and glam. And then you really get into it and think about who's making this and where has this product come from and why do we have so many products?
Yes. And so was that like a huge mountain in front of you that you've got to, how am I now going to, now I've found out about all this, how am I going to change the world?
Sure, I think so my last job where I was styling but I had a contract, that was in between my new environmental journey, where I started to really push people and say, like, I wasn't happy picking up like a cheap pair of shoes just because. And also talking about the mountain, I would come to work every day and there would literally be like a mountain of clothes just chucked on my chair. And I had to deal with that, and that was annoying to me, and it was like a mountain of clothes. So yeah, it was really hard to be working with a fast fashion client and also like just test what was actually the truth about that product. But it was my job at the time, and yeah.
Did you talk to other people you were working with about, did you find other people who were,
I think I drove,
did they try and ignore the whole thing?
I think I drove everybody absolutely bonkers at work. I think they also respected it as well, and some people understood, but again, it was their work. And I also made a presentation to my then managing directors of how the whole industry, the whole studio, the whole business could become more sustainable. Because the one aspect of their client was so unsustainable, how could everything become more sustainable? And then I unfortunately lost my job, but not because of anything, not because of my like pushing towards anything.
Right.
It was just the current climate at the time. Yeah.
So did you then set up your own operation?
So what happened? I had like a downtime because I was kind of so disconnected from one area, but understanding that that was my career, but like not wanting it like anymore. And how was I gonna find what else I wanted?
Right.
And then, so that was last April, and then me and Bernadette came into contact October last year.
Yeah. And she took over your life then.
Yeah, no, so honestly, so thankful, because now I can continue fashion styling, but I want to work with sustainable brands, all brands whose they don't necessarily need to be sustainable, but the team need to understand that we need to make this sustainable as we can, whether it's the lunch options, the transport options, how we're packaging, how we're managing the waste on photo shoots, because that's absolutely ridiculous. I've been on photo shoots in Green Park before and said, oh, we had a gas canister, and who was going to deal with it? So I ended up bringing it home to make sure it ended up at the proper recycling bank. Obviously then I got a taxi home, but at this point Green Park was completely locked down in terms of just traffic, and I had all these balloons because I just refused to let them be just single use. And it was last September for Car Free Day, and we had a party which I organised on our road. I think I don't know if it's nationwide or if it's just London. Sadiq Khan is on the 23rd of September every year, obviously not this year. It promotes people to stop using their cars for a day, and kids come out and play just like we used to do when I was a kid there. And I took all that stuff from these photo shoots to decorate the roads with, because I just refused for it to be single use. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So, okay, well, that's really interesting. So I'm going to turn to Bethan now. Hello, Bethan, up there.
Hi.
So, tell me about yourself. When was the first time you decided or understood about environmental issues and so on?
When I was younger, my brother told me that there was an island of plastic in the sea, and so I didn't know much about it. But my friend Eliza's mum, she knows a lot about it, and my friend Eliza told me a lot about it. Then I understood it a bit better, and I was really worried about it because it was really scary for me, and yeah.
No, I understand that. So what led on from that then, when you suddenly thought, well, here's this terrible thing, did you think, what am I going to do about it?
Yeah, so me and my friends, we all really, really care about it. So we decided we wanted to do something, and we thought we should start a lit picking club, because our school does lit picks like once a year or once every 3 months.
Right.
And the year sixes went down to the beach, and me and my friends really wanted to do it, but we were too young. So we knew the school had lit pickers, so we decided, we planned it for about 2 days, and then we decided that we were going to go to the head teacher's office, and we were going to ask him if we could start a lit picking club. And he thought it was a great, well, I did the talking because I'm the sensible one out of my friends.
Right, good.
And he thought it was a great idea, and he let us use the school lit picking equipment.
Right, excellent. And where did things go on from there then?
So
did that become a regular thing?
Yeah, we started doing it on Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays. And so our school had an eco club. Well, it has one. And most of the people in the eco club joined because they really cared. And we did it in the school field and the schoolyard, and it was just a lot cleaner. But then when we came back after lockdown, a lot of litter had blown into the school field and the schoolyard. Right. So we really want to restart it, and we're hopefully going to soon. It's just we're worried we won't be able to be allowed to use the school lit pickers because of the germs, but we're going to ask soon. And we have some lit pickers now, so maybe we can bring them in and start it again.
Right. So where do you get taught anything at school, or is this out just in your own time, or?
We get taught a lot about the environment in school, and I have 2 teachers who run the eco club, and my mum and my best friend's mum and my other best friend's mum, and so we're usually members of it, and we get taught a lot about it in the eco. club, and we do like assemblies, and we did assembly about fast fashion actually, and we all did acting. So basically one of my friends was someone who was buying loads, and then I was the one that was telling her to stop, and then everyone else was holding up papers and talking about them in the background. So we did a little drama, and I think everyone understood it better after that.
Right, very good. So what's the next step for you then?
Sure, but me and my friends are going to keep on thinking about ways that we can help, and we're going to keep on trying to educate our school about it. And when I go to high school, I'm definitely going to tell everyone about that, because there will be more people listening. It's a bigger school. And so, yeah, and if we get part of a school committee, well, then we're not going to buy any plastic in the school lunches, and we're just going to try and teach everyone more about how to save the planet and the issues that are happening.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I understand that one of your big people is Greta.
Yeah, she's
and
like
you've written her a beautiful handwritten letter.
Yeah, and Amy has put it up on Twitter for her to see, but she hasn't replied yet, but I'm hopefully getting a reply soon, and I'm very excited.
Oh, good. Excellent. That's very good. So that's lovely. So now I want to speak to all of you about, the process of doing the book, and stories about the process, because you had to do it in quite a short time, as I understand, only 6 months. So having produced a lot of books myself, I know how much work is involved.
Yeah.
So shall we go around again? Can I start with you, Bernadette, and say how it was for you? And
we wrote a first draft, John, but it wasn't. It was based on the information that we'd used 30 years ago, and I thought it was going to be an update. But it became really clear that there were several issues that weren't issues 30 years ago that we had to talk about, and that if we were going to talk to young people especially, we wanted to cover the things they were interested in. And that's why there's sections on festivals and glitter and fast fashion and sustainable fashion are covered really well. Beauty industry, we know about all this now, we didn't have it before, so we felt obliged to make sure that it was really fulsome, and that's why it's such a big book. I mean, it's nearly 400 pages for only £12.99. What a bargain.
That's very good. So when did you decide, and how did you meet Amy and Bethan, and when did you decide to bring to do the book, and then you discovered
well,
in Bethan? How did that work?
Lenny Goodings, who was a mere, at the time, 30 years ago, a copy editor, who I work, she was my editor when I wrote the first one 30 years ago. Now she's the chair of Virago and has worked there for 30 years and seen it through all sorts of incarnations, and she's done every job, and she really has a good overview, and this is her swan song, really. At the same time our book was published, Margaret Atwood's was 30 years ago, which became an international tremendous piece of work about women. And it's funny, but Margaret Atwood has been published again by Virago in the last few months at the same time as I have, and that feels like we've come full circle in a way with our knowledge, information and everything. So it's amazing, really. So yeah, thanks, and we have a lot of gratitude to Lenny for letting me choose and saying, well, how do you want to play this? And I did interview and look for and read voraciously about young people that were activists at the time, and there are a lot of them out there with different things, but I knew I wanted a women's team. It's a women's publisher after all. And Bethan I had known since she was 4. or maybe 3, because her mother is a friend of mine. So I've watched her growing up with her, and I know the truth and the reality of her environmental excitement and her interest in nature and her interest in, and I know that she is the real deal. She's 10 years old now, but I've been watching her develop as an activist and as a proper earth lover, nature lover for all that time. And she's done more in her short life already than quite a lot of adults I know. So fair play to Bethan. She was an easy choice, to be honest. But then so was Amy, because the first time I spoke to Amy on the phone, we did a phone interview. She was I'm in Wales and she's in South London. And we had such a lot to talk about, and we were right on the same wavelength. And I knew, I knew that Amy had a really interesting perspective, having come out of the fast fashion industry, and one that not a lot of people were talking about, or they were, but not really understanding it. And Amy's helped us to coalesce and really synthesize the key issues about sustainable fashion and fast fashion in the book, and that's covered really well. Right.
So, and obviously 3 different generations. Did you, was it a surprise to all of you did you find you were on exactly the same wavelength, or was there a big difference in your feelings about it?
Yeah, I think is everyone okay to hear? Yeah. I think we all had the same ideas and worries about what was going on, but being different generations, we can talk to different age groups and different interests, and communicate message to different people, different generations in a different way. Talking about the sanitary products, for example, I can talk to my friends who are currently using them, but I'm also like Bethan's age group. Bethan can be more aware when it's her time, what she needs to look for, because goodness knows how many years ago with me, I used to use the conventional nasty ones, and now I couldn't think of anything worse. And then obviously coming from Bernadette's background with the work she did with Wen, that was inspiring for me, because I was there at the beginning of using the nasty things, and now I'm like, yes, like why are they even being made? And the work that Bernadette did, and the tax that got scrapped earlier this year, I'm so thankful for as a woman who experiences that.
Right. And but your sort of age group, do you find that many people are aware and want to do something, or do you feel that you're still in more of a minority?
You mean in general, just not
in general?
Okay, in general. Yes, I do think my age group is becoming more aware. Talking to like my peers, and sometimes I speak to one friend and she talks to me about yelling at her neighbours because they're not doing their recycling properly. She gets really wound up, and I laugh about it now, because I'm like, like 2 years ago we would never have had this conversation. I'm grateful that I think in every friendship group you need that one person who's fighting for one cause and the other person who's fighting for another cause, where you can all come together and say, you know what, we're a great friendship group and we're doing really great things, and learn from each other and bounce off people's fights. As long as they're good fights, they're all worth fighting for. Yes.
No, that's great. And how about you, Bethan? Are you and your friends just a fairly small group, or is it now spreading around? Do you think other people of your age are beginning to really understand what is going on?
When I brought the book into school for the first time, there was this boy called Anthony in school who was doing a lit pick that night, and my friends hadn't arrived, so I didn't show them first, I showed him first. And so I was very happy that he was doing stuff like me and my friends were doing, and I hope that the other children in school will start to do things like that too. He said that when he did the Litzvik, no one showed up, and the people on his street were just laughing at him. But I told him not to listen to them.
Right, good. So you're hoping that this will gradually spread from what you're doing there out into the bigger world, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. That's great. So again, can I now ask you, Bernadette, each of you in turn, what doing the book, what was the thing that surprised you most?
Oh, that's a good question.
Was there a particular?
Yeah, there definitely was, John. For me, the complexity and the enormity of the way that we abuse animals really hit home for me. From tiny crushed insects that we're spreading over our eyes to make glossy lipstick, through the fashion industry, through the meat industry, and the destruction environmentally that we're causing is one part of it. But then on another level, there's all this horror and pain, and we're causing agony to animals on so many levels without proper care and proper respect. And I think that the thing that came across to me the most, which has redoubled my efforts, and that's why I've been doing work on British species that may become extinct, like the song thrush, that really came across to me is that at every level of our life we are abusing animals.
Yeah. So Amy, how about you?
So when Bernadette spoke about our first phone call, minus the fact that I thought we were just old friends catching up and we hadn't spoken in ages,
Right.
It was very much like, plastic is so bad and I hate it and everyone's using it and it's everywhere and blah, blah, blah. What is it? 12 months later, it's just so much more. It's just everything.
Right.
You know, even to our phones, yeah, like the makeup products we use. And when I talk to my friends about it, we realize it's such a big issue. You know, I've spoken to the girls about it, Netflix shows about the avocado industry and wars about a fruit. And there's so much that we need to think about and be thankful for, and really think about what we buy and the choices that we make, and understand what the choices that we make, what impact that's going to be having on the planet and people. That's
great. That's great. And Bethan, what was it in your research and everything? What was was there one particular thing that really struck you very, very strongly?
Well, I didn't know how many people died from the fossil fuels being released into the air, and it really, really shocked me.
Yeah.
I mean, loads of people are dying just because people don't want to change.
Yeah. Okay. So here's another really important point. As a campaigner, as a writer on these subjects, you want to make people aware, but you don't want to depress them or upset them to the point where they just feel hopeless. So could you each of you say something about that, Bernadette? To
well,
begin?
Actually, I think I am an environmental optimist. Right. The tone of the book is not depressing. There's always options for what you can do. There's always reminding people. There's a chapter in the book called Keeping Well and Sane, and it's about using nature to heal you and working with nature as a force for good in your life personally. I talk about eco-anxiety and how you can kind of rebalance yourself, go walking, look at the stars, listening to birds, excuse me, Listening to birdsong stimulates the endorphins in your brain. And the book as a whole gives you 500 ways you can be a positive environmentalist, a joyful person living in a world where you feel that you're contributing and that you're not wrecking everything, you're doing something sensible, and that you know the way forward. I believe that all the inventions that we need are pretty much invented to get out of this. I believe we should stop fossil fuels right now. Why should we put up with 7 million deaths a year? We don't put up with that. Everyone's going mental about corona. Imagine if there was an emergency and they said, oh, 7 million people are dying every year because we're burning fossil fuels.
Is that through air pollution, do you mean?
Air pollution, that's the United Nations and World Health Organization's figures.
Right, yeah.
And they have directly linked it to fossil fuels. We know it's, and we know, look at the, when we have the coronavirus lockdowns, so many less people went for asthma attacks to hospital.
Well, nature came back.
Nature came back.
Straight away. And
immediately, within weeks, everyone was like, whoa.
The
and
birds
was quiet.
doubled, trebled their efforts. They were, you know, fantastic.
It really heartened people.
Yes. So, Amy, would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, sure. I think especially when I speak to my friends and peers, I think my age group is a lot of social media. And luckily, you know, from my industry, it's a creative industry, and I feel like I can create a pretty picture and then talk about it, especially on social media platform sites. And then luckily last year in the summer, I did, before the book, I did a talk just off the spur of one evening that I was in Soho. Right. And I kind of just naturally came through with comedy and trying to tell people that, you know, this is not good, but then we can do it in this way. And, you know, the talk was filmed and everything, and I've had a really nice reaction. But I think my age group, and maybe the age group between me and Bethan, is social media. And if you make something look pretty, people really engage. And there are a lot of people out there on social media who are interested in these issues.
I'm sure, yeah.
Whether they're activists or whether they're trying to live more of a sustainable life and do like green choices, there is that platform.
That's great. That's great. And Bethan, your friends and so on, it can be scary to think about it, but as you say, once you're engaged in doing something, it's there was a thing with Greenpeace. It was better the optimism of the action than the pessimism of the thought. So if you're just seeing it and it makes you feel so bad to see that is happening, the plastics in the ocean or something. But if you then go down to the beach and start picking up plastic and other things like that, immediately it changes your energy, and you become, as you were saying earlier, once you get involved and are doing something, you feel much better immediately. And if we can communicate that thought to everybody. I mean, just briefly, I just wanted to say a couple of things from my own experience. The animal issue, as Bernadette knows, I started the first animal liberation magazine in 1978. And in Britain and elsewhere, this was a tiny, tiny movement, campaign for against factory farming, for instance. Was one guy in an office in Portsmouth with a secretary. That was it. These are now global movements. In China, the last big thing I did was interview a professor in Australia, a Chinese professor in Australia, who'd written the first book on animal liberation movements in China. So from very small beginnings, and a woman called Margaret Mead said, all changes in the world, all major changes have been from one person or a small group of people, and there is no event where that hasn't been the case. So the power of your book and what you're doing is tremendous, and individually and together, hopefully we can make a big impact. I can't think of anything else to ask you. I'm feel very privileged to speaking to you all today, and I wish you the very best with your book.
Thank you, John. That's really good of you. And, you know, the
Most
world
welcome.
should know more about your own personal achievements in the 50, 60 years you've been really on it. You know, we're very privileged to have you interview us, actually. Thank you.
Well,
yeah, definitely.
Bless you all. Bless you all.
And there you have the culture and environmental writer John May, who interviewed the three writers earlier, who covered, I think, a wide range of topics. And we want to thank John for his service to the environment, his lifetime service to the environment, really. The music you've heard tonight on Green Futures Festivals Radio is from the Shakti Sings Choir. And you can find out more about the campaign of the three women, Bernadette Vallely, Amy Charuy-Hughes and Bethan Stewart James, by looking at their website, www.yourplanetneedsyou.org.uk. You can also buy the book from there and some special edition postcards if you buy the book and thwart the Amazons for a little while. So the book's available online and it's also available as a hardback. Well done to everyone involved, and thank you to Green Futures Festivals Radio.